Alright, welcome to another episode of Ceremony is Everything. We're super excited to be introducing Nick Von Kay, founder of Nick Von Kay. One of New Zealand's most awesome jewelers, a brand and a man that I've known for some time, and super excited to be spending some time with him and getting to know. So,
cheers, Dion.
Alright, well, so 2010, that's the sort of the when it all kicked off. How did you get started?
I mean, it's funny when you say when it kicked off, and it's probably the same for you. Like, I was kind of in the background for maybe 15 years before that.
Yeah.
Kind of kicking around. And I feel like when I launched the brand, everyone was like, where's this come from? It's been building up for a while, you know? It didn't just come out of nowhere. But I feel like rather than coming straight out of university or out of, I don't know, teenage years and trying to launch a brand, for me, it was really good because I had heaps of time to see how other people did it, to check out the whole way things worked, even just production or resourcing or, you know, price points, marketing, all those things, and watching from afar and then being like, I'm going to do it like this.
It's interesting, I when reading up and doing that, and I'd read somewhere that, you really had done Business 101 in a way, right? Touched every touch point of the business, worked in it, and got to know it. But that's such an important part. So many people have an idea of starting a business or a brand, and they have all of that part nailed. But unless you know the margins, unless you know all of the other bits and how to sell, right?
And there was probably a good 5 years of just floating around doing not much.
Yeah.
Selling at markets and walking around the streets, walking into shops and being like, can I make you something? You know, do you want to buy something? And then I hooked up with Ricochet at the time, started doing jewelry for them. And that was kind of like my degree in how to do all this, because they were so good at business.
Yeah.
Everything was rolling. They were a really strong brand at the time, and I just learned heaps just watching them. And they'll be like, we can't sell it for this, we need to buy it for this, you know, make it like this or change this, and basically just telling me what to do a lot.
Yeah. And
figured out heaps from that. And then that brand kind of got sold and changed, and that's when I was like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And then I started my own brand.
And the name?
Because my grandfather was Peter von Klarwell, so I've always thought, oh, it's a cool kind of part of the name that he dropped when he came here during the Second World War. He didn't want people to think he was a Nazi, obviously. He was actually Jewish, so he was all like, okay, let's just get rid of that and make it simple. But I remember I had a flatmate and she was like, oh yeah, it's quite cool, you could call yourself like Nick Von Kay, and it always stuck in my mind. I was like, oh yeah, that's quite a cool idea. And then probably 10 years later, started the brand, and I was like, oh, there was that name that my flatmate mentioned that time, and yeah, it could be quite good.
It seemed to me, because it so perfectly aligns somehow with your design. I think even if you didn't know the brand, and then if someone gave you a whole lineup of jewelry and said, which one of these is Nick Von Kay, I think that 9 times out of 10 they'd pick it out. So.
I hope so. I mean, I feel like I always do random things.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of brands out there and they kind of have more of a discernible style.
Yes.
And I've always been like, I want to just do random stuff to keep myself happy. But I like to think that if anyone goes, that's random, it's probably Nick Von Kay.
I know why you would say that you do random things, because from really fine sort of engagement rings through to sort of your octopus ring and different stuff, and everything in between, right?
I've always loved European styling.
Yeah.
I've spent heaps of time in Europe just walking down a back street of like cobblestones and like stupid buildings that aren't even part of the main thing. You know, they're all so cool. It's like you're in a fairy tale and there's like curly little things everywhere, and it's like, it's so cool. And then there's the churches and the art galleries. I feel like for me, being Kiwi is like this kind of openness, because we are an amalgamation of cultures, and in some ways we're a young country, so we don't have like strict kind of guidelines of aesthetic. We have this freedom to kind of throw things around, and we're not trapped in our aesthetic ideas. We're kind of just like open and
it's so good.
Open in our, in our aesthetics, and so it's kind of like the Kiwiness for me is that ability to be really random and creative, and take all that kind of, European stuff, but also just kind of inspiration from anywhere.
It goes back to, I think, our wine industry for me. Like, for a long time being new or young was almost like a bit of a monkey on our back, I think. And but I think the wine industry, you know, which predates both of us, but to me it was the first time we became boutique, and the newness of our country was an asset, and it was like, hey, we don't have to follow the convention, but we're also going to learn the rules of the convention just so we can break them. It felt like
pioneering spirit, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, coming here and being like, we're just going to start a new life, and we can choose whatever it is, and those genes are kind of coming through as well, you know.
You know, obviously inspiration from Europe and your grandfather, and obviously you draw from local, but like, you know, I would say you're an artist before you're a jeweler, and that might be my impression.
Yeah.
And so therefore, like, where did you draw? Like, you know, was it music? Is it art? Any particular people or genres that you drew from?
It's funny when you say artist, because when I was growing up, all I wanted to be was an artist, and my parents would always say to me, "You don't want to be an artist. They'll never make any. You know, artists never make any money until they die." And so as a kid, you're like, "Oh, that sounds terrible. Why would I want to do that?" You know, well, think about death.
Yeah.
So that's all I wanted to be, but I had this kind of thing of you can't do that. And so I think jewellery ended up being, I was doing like painting and sculpture and music and all sorts of things, and jewellery ended up being the one that was kind of the most commercially viable at the time. And I think it is one of the, you know, art forms that is more commercially viable than others potentially. So I kind of fell into that more out of like necessity of having to pay the rent than much else. Like I'd be painting, didn't sell any of those. Okay, so sell some jewellery, better make some more.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely that aspect of it. But I come from more of an artist viewpoint, definitely.
See how the merging of the artist into the businessman, like you know, you. And you know, we've survived the last. I think survival is a word that I would not have used 5 years ago. Like it feels like, but having been through COVID and now, you know, the current environment, it feels like survival is winning. You know, like but it's also,
sure.
But I also feel a little bit battle hardened. But how has that sat with you in terms of your artistry, and you know, have you had to evolve your business thinking or strategies?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or, you know,
absolutely. Definitely at first I got so excited about doing everything, you know, like t-shirts, watches, you know, runway shows, just all sorts of crazy things. It was like, oh my God, this is so fulfilling as an artist. And then you get to the end of a lot of those things and be like, okay, we, you know, didn't make much money. We spent a lot of money and a lot of time, and I'm exhausted. And, you know, so you start to kind of just eliminate things that the next time you think of a project, you're like, let's not.
Yes.
So the artist kind of, it doesn't kind of get drowned out, but I think it refines into something that works better commercially, and then the two worlds kind of blend together rather than, you know, and it is a process of survival, but I think it's that kind of youthful enthusiasm.
Also, like, maybe, and might just be me just as I've aged, but I think great artists have always found a way to sell and be a business at the same time in a way.
I think so.
It's actually part of it, right? If you know, obviously there's people who no one knew of until they died and were discovered. That's different, but you know, a Picasso or the modern artists of their time, you know, and Andy Warhol or whoever. It's like survival is and thriving is where you need to be, and I think that part of it is actually the more exciting challenge in a weird way, right?
There is a real challenge when you come up with an idea and then like that's a thrill.
Yeah. And
then like how well is it going to do?
Yes.
It's like a separate thrill and a separate kind of challenge.
Yeah.
And sometimes when those things do well, you're like, oh, I nailed both of those.
Yes.
You know, like satisfied me aesthetically and satisfied me commercially.
Yeah. So
we can make money. And sometimes it's more one and more the other.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely like I said, the blending of the two.
When I look on your website, like there's just, and I don't know whether it might be the most obvious thing, so I apologise if it is, but there's two things that stand out for me when I look at it. One is the jet plane, you know, the Pounamu, and I just like, for me, and I just love that. Oh God, wish I'd done that.
Yes, I've done that. Yeah,
It's like, that's a great. There's this. You don't even need to explain how many levels that nails it.
But it's not just one thing. It's not just this or that. It's like don't know what it is. It's a Kiwi thing. It could be.
It's something, and it's on a very small level. It's just a really nice piece of Kiwiana. Like I say Kiwiana for the best possible way. So I read a little bit around you've still got relationships with artisans in Bali and people like that. So from the start, it sounds like you had, I guess, a vision and a plan about how to scale at least on some level, right?
I don't know about vision and plan. That sounds way. It's more like hit and miss.
Okay, well,
I mean, the thing with Bali is, I was like, I want to go to Bali. Went there, and then discovered that there was all these artists making things, and you could like sit down with them and get to know them and become friends with them. And that was kind of revolutionary to me, and I was like, oh my god, I can make all these things with these guys. But at the time, I was working with Ricochet more, and I would try and do a few little things, but the price point wouldn't really work, and it didn't really work out. But I kind of had it sitting there just because I'd fallen into it, really. And with a commercial mind, you sort of you roll across things, and you go, maybe I could with that, and then put it aside. Yeah. And then I launched the brand, and I was like, I know. Go back to Bali, perfect. Yeah. Do the silver there, I could work with these guys in it. So the framework was there, but it was never planned. It was just sort of luckily fell into it. But had that kind of like vision of being like, that could work. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And how much of it, of the business now is trying to do those bespoke one-offs and keep that going?
I used to do a lot of one-offs in silver, and again had a really good time artistically, but found it really hard to sell stuff, and especially at a price where everything was worthwhile and the time input and everything. And I felt like I was asking people to pay too much for things, and people just wouldn't anyway. Just seemed too expensive. So moving into gold, then you could spend a lot of time on things and make little one-offs with heaps of like intention and thought and detail, and people would still pay the price because it's at the level of other gold stuff. So moving into gold was revolutionary for the one-off thing to continue. For me, but I got to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I mean, I'd often make 10 of something. I've done a lot of that, made 10 and then sold 10 and then be like, I'm not going to make any more. And I remember one super quirky one was this, I don't know where I get these ideas, it was like an elephant's foot, and then you open it up and inside was a baby elephant carved out of stone. And I was so into the whole idea, I don't even know how it makes sense now. It doesn't make any sense, but like 10 people loved it. Eventually, I sold 10 maybe over like 2 years or something.
When you look back though, the things sticking to those principles and doing those little things at the start and still having that in your DNA, I think that's what makes you, legacy brand or a brand worth falling in love with and following and believing in.
The cool thing about those little experiments that maybe fail, there's so many things that are sort of inquantifiable. Like failure is a great thing for motivation and success. I found for humility, and then someone being like, "I love that freaking axe you did once," and you're like, "Oh, that was cool." Just a little moment. I don't know, you can put effort into all these things and they can seem fruitless. But it's kind of like mind blowing. It's like, do you really like my stuff? Wow, that's cool.
The other thing I would say is there's certain brands and there's certain people and that sort of create more space. I say they create more space in the tent, and it's sort of like by them existing, it creates more freedom for you to exist and trial and do more things. And I feel like you're one of those brands in New Zealand. And I just remember seeing your brand for the first time, and the jewelry for the first time, going, wow, this dude's like out of it. Like, this is awesome.
So are they going to spectacularly fail or actually get a note?
But you could see the winners as well. It was like
there's probably tons of things that attempt to be successful and fail because it's wrong place, wrong time, and then we never hear about them, right? And then the ones that do, they create like a wave of other people following. I mean, it's such an interesting, like, timing is such an interesting thing.
And so timing for you launched and you went up to the States with this, with the fashion show.
Yeah.
And, you've had like, famous people buy your jewelry. Like, what does
I don't know. Like, I feel the market in New Zealand works really well for me.
Yeah.
Like, I've always been like, you should go international. You're never successful until you're a success overseas, and we've done a lot of that, pushing out into different markets with greater or lesser degrees of success. Like, for example, Nicole Miller in New York, things like that. And it's kind of good for a moment. It's good PR. But for me, the market in New Zealand is big enough.
Yeah.
And working one-on-one with individuals for engagement rings or special rings or just, jewellery in general seems to be big enough and enough money for me.
Yeah.
I guess I don't really want to, franchise or, be that big. So, yeah, it seems more trouble than it's worth a lot of times. Even though people are like, it's the biggest market. It's like, yeah, but they're actually a bunch of little markets and you have to do each one individually. It's like if someone was going international to here, it's the same thing. It's not like one global market.
It risks taking your eye off the ball, right? It's because it's like
time and energy,
because it's a lot of time and energy moved away from the core focus. But it's a little bit like getting your core strong, right? Like if you don't have a strong core and don't know who you are and who your customer is and have all of that under control. And it's that global ambition is a dangerous thing. It can be a double-edged sword.
I've always been a fan of the idea that you do all your homework and you've got all your ducks in a row for that moment when you get a stroke of luck.
Yeah.
Like Nicole Miller turning up. I put so much effort into everything, and then stroke of luck, someone walks in and they're like, I like that. What else do you got? And you're like, I've got all this. Instead of, getting that stroke of luck and you haven't actually done any homework and you haven't got yourself prepared.
Yeah.
So like kind of just working on the nuts and bolts in the day to day.
Yeah.
Instead of reaching for amazing things all the time and then just kind of waiting for those moments so you're prepared and then like you can utilize it, you can maximize it when it happens.
Having a process that's your own during the day, having a coffee or anything, is that something that resonates with you? Do you have moments in your day or your week where you are yours, that you call your own and maybe have some sort of ritual to them or ceremony to them?
I think so. Definitely my dog, Chili, is a big one. And also maybe the first thing I do in the morning is I make a cup of coffee for me and my partner.
Yeah.
She's not a morning person. And it used to be, we would go like day on, day off, so it'd be like, it's your turn today. And eventually I figured out it was really hard for her to do. I was like, I'll just
this is on me, this now.
It's my little act of service for you. And there's this nice kind of like, she loves it. I kind of enjoy doing that for her, and then I'll give him a bit of a pat and a scratch, and those little moments are kind of, the little gems of your day. And then at the end of the day, he wants to sit on my lap, and then maybe she'll come home, we'll have a chat, and there's all the cool things that happen during your day, but those little kind of regular grounding moments, and having a dog has really changed my life.
This is Chili, 2 years old. He's the boss. And what about the creative process for you? So like, is there some routine, or is there a process, or is a lot of creative people, have to pull themselves away, or some people say it comes in any moment? Like,
it used to be uncontrollable. It used to come and go.
Yeah.
And then, it'd be like, I've got nothing, or then it's like, everything consuming. And I don't know how that changed, but I think just needing to be creative more often, or instead of doing like, I'm going to create a whole collection and then produce it and market it, and, being more regular with it has meant that I've just kind of gone, I'm not going to be the person who has to be in the right place or be in the right state or have a season and then I'm blank. I'm going to be the person who is creative whenever I want to be, every day. And sometimes I'll stare at a problem like, what am I going to do at this gym? And I'll just sit there and I'm just like, got nothing for ages. But I kind of just try and push through until I get something and train my brain to be like, you can do this whenever you want. Like, I feel like it's a practice, and it's I'm going to train myself into this rather than I'm at the mercy of whenever it comes and goes.
It's always amazing to me when you speak to someone how similar people's journeys are. You know, and we all assume, you know, I guess that we have our own story to tell, but so often, you know, it's about, you know, getting something out. There's a great saying which I heard years ago, which is, there's a Charlie Brown comic or something, and it was like, there's no heavier burden in the world than a great potential. And I feel like you know, we all feel that, right? If you feel like you've got something, a talent as an artist or anything, it's like until you've got something out to the world, you know, it's a burden, you know, and it's wrought with sort of you know, things.
And that can be a difficult thing to accept, because you have moments of satisfaction. But if you said that to somebody and they're like, well, that's no way to live, and it's like, well, actually, you know, you'd never want to stop.
Yeah.
You'd never want to be like, I've just achieved everything. And then you stop. You know, you always want to have that level of dissatisfaction that's going to draw you forwards to the, like, I just made this whole thing, it was really good, and then the next day you're like, I could do better, or there's something, I need to do, and that's what propels you forward. And you know, why would I ever stop doing, what am I going to pick up, Scrabble? I don't know, you know, I'm always going to want to make something, or even if it's, I don't know, gardening, you're still involved in a creative process of beginnings and things that happen, and you know, for me, that is the best feeling in life. Being involved with that stuff. So
that's us. That ceremony is everything. It's been great. I just, like, if you don't know, go and check Nick out. His story is amazing. He's an inspiration. So thank you for coming in.
Thanks, man.
And spending time.
Cheers.
We're stoked to be doing a little collab, sort of a little bit of stuff going on with you guys. But you will go on to great things and keep doing the great things you're doing. So thank you very much for your time, and great to see you.
Yeah, cheers, Dion. Thanks, man. It was cool. Yeah.